Hey folks, this week Dan and I talk with Peter van Dijk about PowerDNS. It's one of those building blocks of the internet that you use all the time, even though you probably don't realize it. It's open source and it's a really neat project. You don't want to miss it. This is FLOSS Weekly episode 831, recorded Tuesday, April 29th. Let's have lunch. Just a quick bit of errata that Peter let me know after we recorded this episode, where we talked about PowerDNS admin, and he complained that it was using the old pre-API connection. It was pointed out that that is actually PowerAdmin, and PowerDNS admin is a newer project that uses the API as it was intended. Sorry for the confusion, and enjoy the show. It's time for FLOSS Weekly. That's the show about free, libre, and open source software. I'm your host, Jonathan Bennett, and we've got something really cool today. We're going to be talking about PowerDNS. And of course, it's always DNS, right? It's not just me. We've got the wonderful, the original Linux outlaw, Dan the Man Method. Dan, welcome, Dan.
Hey, Jonathan, it's good to be back.
It is good to have you. It seems like it's been a while since you've been here, which is unfortunate because we always have a lot of fun on the show together.
Yeah, it has been a little while, hasn't it? So it's especially good to be back and on the streams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so today we've got something really fun. We've got Peter van Dijk of the PowerDNS project, and I was saying before the show, I actually use PowerDNS on a couple of my co-located. Well, it's one co-located server with a couple of VMs on it for doing DNS. Have you rubbed shoulders with the PowerDNS project before?
I haven't. I've never used it, so I'm a complete PowerDNS virgin at the moment. So I'm looking forward to learning a lot more about it today. I know a bit about DNS. I do know that it's always DNS. We all know that. Just to make the joke again, I know you've already made that joke, but it is, even when you think it's not DNS, it is DNS. I was told by
yes, in some way it is. Do you host your own DNS? Have you ever done that? Gone down that rabbit hole?
Not much, no. I haven't really, so I'm really looking forward to learning more about it today. I've been reading up on PowerDNS during the day, so I know a little bit about all the different projects and stuff that they've got going. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more from Peter.
I will say it's not as painful as hosting your own email, but there are some,
that's good.
There are some real gotchas. I have gotten the call from the data center before. This may have been before I started using PowerDNS even, but the call from the data center saying, you've got an open relay on your DNS and it's getting used in DDoS attacks. Please stop that before we go unplug your cables.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, that's not good. Let me go fix that for you.
That's, yeah. If it's easier than hosting your own email, then that's good, because I've come across hosting my own email before, where I had a lot of spam sent through one of my servers, which was not great.
Yeah. We'll get to PowerDNS here in a second, but this is just too much fun to pass by. I am currently struggling through an email problem. I had to change where my server was located, change ISPs for the server, and the static IPs that they assigned me apparently somehow originally came out of Iran. Like they got reallocated or something. So when you go and do a lookup on those IP addresses, it's like associated with the Iranian, the NIC from Iran, and so they get blocked by a lot of places, and it's not good for putting an email server on. So we're still trying to fix that.
Wow.
So DNS, back to the actual topic of the show, we have the expert on PowerDNS, at least. Let's go ahead and bring him on, Mr. Peter van Dijk. Sir, welcome to the show. We are so glad to have you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening in my case.
Good evening in your case, yeah, understandable. We have all of the, just about all of the potentials covered here. It's morning time for me, afternoon for Dan, I think, and evening for you. That's perfect. So let's start with the very basic questions. What is PowerDNS and why would somebody reach for it as a solution?
Okay, so I assume you know what DNS is. Actually, you mentioned you do. PowerDNS is one of a wide selection of software you can choose from if you want to run your own DNS, both as a resolver and as a hoster. There's others, of course. The original Bind DGB DNS, which almost nobody uses anymore, as it hasn't seen a patch in 20 years. Not DNS, the Anonymous Lab stuff. We distinguish ourselves on the hosting side by allowing you to have your records stored in a database, where things are served live from the database. You can easily update things. And on the resolver side, we distinguish ourselves in performance and in filtering or, well, content control features and scripting you can use to steer things this way or that way. And then on top of all of that, we have DNS dist, which is like a proxy or a load balancer that is not PowerDNS specific. It also works with other name servers, and people, in fact, often run DNS dist in front of their resolver or authoritative name server from another brand as well.
Mm-hmm. How long has PowerDNS been around? What's like the history of the project?
PowerDNS is 25 years old now, I think, maybe 26. But I think the first commit in the open source repo is from 99 or 2000. Mm-hmm. It was closed source before that, during the .com boom. Mm-hmm. But that did not last, like many things at the time. So it was open sourced back then under the GPL v2. And people just started using it. And we've been growing users, and our users have been growing users, because a single user of our software might have 1 million customers at home, passing all their DNS through PowerDNS.
Yeah. Does it do well with that kind of scale?
Yes. Yes.
And how long have you been involved in PowerDNS? I guess what's your position there now? Are you sort of the head of the project now? And
so I joined like 14 years ago. At that time, there were 0 employees. There was just the original founder, who also had a different business to run, who realized he was actually bringing in some support contract money from customers, but did not have the time to actually support them. So he said, "Peter, let's have lunch." I said, "Bert, no, I have a job." He said, "No, let's have lunch." So we had lunch, and I quit my other job, which I did hate anyway. He knew that. So then I was the only employee. So I had to do support, development, be involved in sales a bit, not too much. Then, like, what?
I know how that goes. I am a single man shop doing IT here in town, so I get to do all of that stuff too.
Right. Yeah. Then, like 2 years later, we hired one other guy, and then we merged with a company called Open Exchange, who do like Exchange but open, so on premise, or now they also offer it as a cloud thing, or etc. They also got acquired. They also acquired Dovecot at the same time, the IMAP server.
Oh, okay. Are those projects still all sort of under the same umbrella?
Yes, still true today. Anyway, we were thinking we could hire sales, hire HR, hire finance, etc., or just find the company that already has all of those things. And incidentally also wants to sell to the exact same customers we want to sell to. So we joined them, which gained me like 200 new coworkers overnight.
Little culture shock there.
Yes, very, very much so. Yeah. And then over time, PowerDNS under that umbrella has grown to like 30 people. And I'm not really in charge of anything, although I'm a product owner for one of the products. But I do find that with my history, people come to me a lot because I've seen everything. I've had my hands in every project.
Yeah, interesting. That's always a nice problem to have, where you have support contracts coming in. And it's like, how do I deal with people giving me this money? What is kind of the business model there? Is it just that? Is it other companies want to have someone to pay for support? Is that really how PowerDNS makes money?
So 40 years ago, that's how it started, and then by that time, it got to the point that they could afford to hire one person for that. But these days, it's a little bit more complicated. We do still sell support contracts, quite a few of them, in fact. But we also realize that there are needs that only really big businesses have, like big telcos. So we've written more software, which is not open source, that we sell or license to some of those telcos. And that allows us to have this team and build all this software and have all of the bits that everybody would enjoy open source. And then some of the bits that most people don't need are not open source.
Yeah, interesting. Has there ever been kind of a movement to take some of those things that are not open source? Because this was the original project. It started out as closed source, and then it sort of became apparent that it made more sense to open source it. Are some of those bits sort of on that same migration pattern?
Well, yes and no. If you want to know what we're up to in the closed source, it's always fun to watch our GitHub and look for new integration points appearing in the open source.
Yeah.
We have some libraries that we built internally where we realized, well, there's no value in keeping this exclusive. We can publish this library, like we have a client library for Amazon S3 that we use in the product that we open sourced. Although the product that was for is also open source now. It's called Lightning Stream. It allows you to synchronize DNS data via a storage like Amazon S3.
Mm-hmm.
And that project is open source as well. No, but in general, so let me explain what we're selling just briefly, because I'm not here to sell. The biggest market for us is ISPs that need to offer content filtering or parental controls. Like in the United Kingdom, ISPs have to offer this, and that's a big market for us. And I don't see us open sourcing the bits that do that.
That makes sense. Is there a challenge that you guys have run into about let's say the viral nature of GPL? Is that challenging to keep these closed source pieces? I don't know exactly how they integrate with the open source. But I know sometimes in some of the projects that I've worked in, even it's a challenge to be able to do things like that without sort of inheriting the GPL unintentionally on your closed source stuff, or breaking the license. Right, that's the other thing you don't want to do.
Yeah, no, that's exactly why you will sometimes see integration points, hooks appear in the open source that we then on the closed source side can hook some Lua scripts into, which can do logic on resolver queries, and on the other end there's APIs that software can talk to make the open source do things or not do things. So it's I wouldn't say it's been a challenge, but it's a very good question, and we need to think about this a lot. Yeah.
So Peter, do you have is there a hosted product? I'm thinking about the whole kind of business model that you've got there. Is there a hosted version of this that I could come to you or maybe a partner or somebody and say I'd like, as an off-the-shelf solution that you will host for me?
No, not really. There's places you can go to and give money that will run PowerDNS for you, of course. Like a lot of web hosters, if you let them do your DNS, they might be doing that on PowerDNS. And if you use one of the open resolvers, you might end up also using PowerDNS. But we don't sell any hosted products right now. On the email side we do, but on the DNS side we do not.
Right, okay. Yeah, it was just something I was curious about because I know some companies use that as a revenue model as well. So you mentioned there's about 30 people working PowerDNS right now. Do you get a lot of... I know you've got a lot of stuff going on through GitHub because I've been looking through all your GitHub stuff today. Do you get a lot of patches from the community? Do you accept patches from the community? Do you pull them in?
Yeah, we accept patches from the community. We get quite a few. We get more issues than patches, of course. But I do think we have a couple of pull requests from outside the company a week.
Yeah, that's good.
Wow.
And a lot of those will get accepted, or maybe after review and some back and forth. But
right.
People appear to enjoy working on the software, or at least willing and able to fix the things they want to fix.
The project has been around for 25 years. DNS has been around for, 40 years? Isn't it done yet? What are the patches still for?
That's a great question. People keep inventing new ways in which they want to change answers they give out. They keep inventing new transports. People keep having new performance needs. For example, Intel sells some hardware now that can offload TLS handshakes. And then a customer came to us, can you support that? Because with DOT, DNS over TLS, DOH, DNS over HTTPS on the rise, people are finding that they're suddenly spending all their CPU doing TLS and not DNS. And then when Intel comes out with a little chip or a CPU add-on that can handle that in hardware, then people want to use that hardware for that, and that's code we have to write.
Yeah. I suppose that part of it is definitely not done.
No. No, and then there's just the ever-evolving software landscape. Whenever a new Debian or Red Hat or whatever comes out, we need to make sure we work with that, especially when it's a new OpenSSL.
Mm-hmm. OpenSSL updates or glibc updates or any of those. Yeah, it's a constant thing.
Yeah, but OpenSSL breaks more stuff.
I can believe that. Yeah, that seems that seems legit. All right. So one of the things that we were talking about before the show that I mentioned briefly is this idea of DNS as a DDoS amplifier. I'm sure that is something that you guys have at least seen before. I've not gotten the email while using PowerDNS that my server was being used to DDoS amplification attacks. And I guess I can give the background on this. The idea is you can send a UDP packet to a DNS server. You can send a really small UDP packet and trick the DNS server into giving you a big response. And because you can spoof UDP, you can get that server to send that response off to a target that you're trying to DDoS. And it's bad. It's not great. What does PowerDNS do to avoid that problem?
So, as I mentioned before, we have the resolver and the product a hoster would use. And then we have our proxy/load balancer called DNS dist for distributor. And that one is rate limiting and can check query rates, see where things are coming from. And the biggest trick you can use in that area, which is not unique to us, is instead of responding with a big packet, you respond with a small packet that just tells the client, please try again over TCP. That's a couple of extra round trips, but then you're not sending out more bytes over UDP than you got in over UDP. So when you're under such an attack, or actually being used for such an attack, you could decide to switch to that mode and incur a little performance penalty, but suddenly all the queries you're answering are legit because they came in over TCP and not UDP.
PowerDNS does some of this by default, I hope, I assume.
Very little bit. We like to think our users are competent enough to decide what's good for them, configure things that way.
That may or may not be a safe assumption.
Yeah.
Is this sort of Go ahead, Dan.
Sorry, Jonathan. I was just going to say, I did notice when I was looking through your website today, you offer training as well. So you do offer, you say you hope the users are smart enough to know what they're doing, but you also offer training as well. That's another thing that you do.
Yeah, interesting.
That's true, yeah. Usually when we do trainings, it's existing customers, but yeah, we do have those.
Can I pay you money and send you my setup files, my configuration files, and an IP address, and say, can you audit my PowerDNS install?
So we don't do that. We really want customers that will stick with us for a year, 3 years, 5 years, or whatever. I do have some friends I can refer you to, and we in fact do this sometimes when a request comes into sales, and somebody's like, I have $5,000. I just wanted a couple of days of help. We will find somebody for you. Except usually they have $500, in which case we will not.
We know a guy that might be able to help you out for $500, but that's below our threshold.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that may seem mean to folks, but when you're running a business, particularly of a certain size, you just have to have that sort of a cutoff, or else you spend all day chasing these little leads around and not making hardly any money.
Exactly.
And it costs money to have 30 developers.
We don't have 30 developers, sadly. There's a couple of other roles in there, but yes, they do all cost money.
Yes. So when I use PowerDNS, I actually use it with something called PowerDNS Admin. And I have to admit, I'm not even sure. Is that official from you guys, from PowerDNS? Do you have patches in PowerDNS Admin? Did you write it?
We did not write it. It's not from us. I think we might have a patch or two in there. For a long time, it was basically the only front end you could download for PowerDNS, I think. So it got quite popular. But these days, there's like 15 or 20 you can choose from. We have a list on our wiki. And PowerDNS admin is not one we would recommend today. That's not because it's bad. But when it was written, all you could do was do SQL, update, insert, delete, whatever. Over the last 15 years, we've developed a REST API right inside our product, which does syntax validation and other sanity checks. So we prefer that front ends use that interface. And there's a bunch of front ends out there that do that, which allows us to then make sure that whatever goes into the database is correct. And if you use PowerDNS admin, you don't get that sanity check from our software. You just get the checks that are in PowerDNS admin itself.
One of the disadvantages of it being sort of the oldest solution in the field.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is quite battle tested, of course.
Yeah, right. So what do you use? Which of these front ends, graphical or web front ends, do you use to administer PowerDNS servers?
I spoiled this before the show.
I sometimes tell guests that just because I ask a question, it doesn't mean that I don't know the answer.
That too. So anyway, inside PowerDNS, the product for hosters, the authoritative server, we have a tool called PDNS util, which has a feature called edit zone. So you just go to your shell, go PDNS util edit zone example.com, and it fires up your editor. In my case, it's some form of VI. So that's what I do for my private domains, and then for work domains, for which I share administration, I use a thing called zone control, which is a web front end, but not an open source one.
Okay, yeah, interesting. PowerDNS sort of baked into it. It has the ability to have multiple name servers that talk to each other and automatically stay synced.
So yeah, you can use zone transfers for that, which is very standard, works with every brand. And then beside that, because we can be database backed, you can use MySQL replication, Postgres replication, or whatever. And then also, there's another open source product, which I briefly mentioned before. It's called Lightning Stream. And it will take your DNS data, serialize it into an S3 bucket, and another node will download it, merge that data, handle any conflicts. And that way you can have like a multi-primary thing going on without an actual database server.
Yeah, it's interesting. Every time you go to do anything with DNS, and you set up your glue records, everything wants an NS1 and an NS2. It's like you're required to have multiple DNS servers. And I must admit, for the longest time, my NS1 and my NS2 pointed to the same server.
Yeah, why not? Because if you had a separate NS2 and it was down, then your website was down anyway, I bet.
Yes, when you're that small of a hosting thing, that is the way that tends to work. How big of deployments do you guys have? So on the other side of the coin, how many NSX, do some of your big deployments have that you see?
How many name servers?
Well, yeah, just like what kind of scale are we talking about on the upper side of what PowerDNS does?
So I know one user, not actually a customer, but a user who has like 1.5 million domains in one setup.
My goodness.
Wow.
Replicated over a couple of name servers. And these people, they sent big patches, like really big. Because they had a name server they wrote themselves, which worked for them, but they wanted to switch to PowerDNS because then they don't have to maintain it.
Yeah.
But they were unhappy about some of the aspects of it, including some of the scaling. So a guy there spent weeks typing away, and we got big patches, and we reviewed them, and we merged those, and everybody wins.
Yeah.
So there's that. 1.5 million is one I know of with a couple of name servers. I am aware of some deployments that do Anycast, where you can buy that as a service that must have hundreds or thousands of nodes, with again probably hundreds no, sorry, hundreds or thousands of nodes with probably hundreds of thousands of domains on them. And then on the resolver side, we know that we have users and customers that run entire countries on PowerDNS on a couple of servers. So might be millions of users.
Yeah.
When I'm thinking Europe, and then the US, of course, even bigger.
Yeah. Interesting. Has the project been battle tested enough that like that doesn't keep you up at night?
Well, that's the beauty of being open source. I mean, we have a couple of customers, and if we had just those customers running this code, that would be quite uneasy.
Right.
But I know there's a ton of users out there that run this stuff all day, every day without trouble. One other big user is Quad9, the Open Resolver. They split their load between PowerDNS and Unbound, the resolver from NLNet Labs, with our DNS dist in front. And they do that at hundreds of locations for I think, millions of queries per second worldwide.
Yeah, impressive. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Is the problem actually always DNS, as we joked a couple of times?
No, of course not. No. One of the reasons I think that comes up a lot is that whenever you want to do anything with a network, you got to do DNS before you can do anything else. You can go to google.com without the IP of google.com. So if the network prevents you from reaching your resolver, it's your DNS that looks broken. So I think actually we should just always blame the network.
Yeah. What about IPv6? Is that supported in PowerDNS? How long has that been supported?
You can imagine I have a sign in my office that says days since the dual stack incident. And the number on that sign is not a big number.
No, it's not.
But generally V6 has been supported in our software for a long time, and most other software as well.
It's kind of
sometimes we run into things.
It's kind of funny. On my ISPs, I have not been able to get IPv6 until very recently. In fact, I talked about having to move my server. My previous ISP wouldn't give me IPv6, and that was actually one of the things I was excited about with the new one, is that I could get like a /56 of static IPv6 addresses. I haven't done much with them yet, but I've got them. I've got a couple of hosts up, and that's. I think part of it is because I'm in the middle of nowhere. I'm in flyover country, and so like getting IPv6. My local ISP, when I asked them the first time, they're like, "You want what?"
Yeah.
So, IPv6. I remember about 15 odd years ago, maybe 16 years ago, at our local lug, we had one of the guys gave a talk about IPv6. In which he said it was now going to take over everything, and of course the standard joke since then is every year we say to him, "Is this the year that IPv6 is going to take over?" Because it still doesn't seem to be quite doing that. Anyway, so Peter, let's have a talk about some of the components that are involved in all this. Because you can tell I've been reading the documentation. That's where all my questions are coming from. But I noticed you have like 3 main products. That are used. So you got Recursor. So what is Recursor? That's the resolver?
Yeah, that's what an Access ISP would run. It's what Quad9 runs. It's what workstations, laptops, phones talk to.
Right. And we've got Authoritative Server, which is the name server with the database in the background and all of that.
Which is what the recursor then talks to on your behalf, yeah.
And then you've got DNS dist, which is the thing you were saying a lot of companies run in front of other products, not even in front of PowerDNS.
Yeah, exactly. It's because it's just DNS. It's same way you could put an Nginx as a proxy in front of some other web product. You can put DNS dist as a proxy in front of some other DNS product. People are finding that the way you can intercept queries with that or look at queries with that, steer them in other directions, also adds value to other name servers.
Excellent. So was that part of the? I mean, I don't know if you were around during the design process of this, but was that idea of being compatible with everything else? Was that something that was important to you guys? Do you think?
Yeah,
keep it, use standards?
I was there. It's like 12 years ago, I think. And it seemed obvious. And also, it's if you're writing something for a protocol stack, it's harder to be incompatible than to just be compatible.
Yeah.
And there's some nuance there, because if you put a proxy in front of something, then the thing in the back can no longer see who its clients are. And solving that within the DNS protocol in a way that's compatible with other products, that has been a headache. But other than details like that, it's always been obvious to us that you should just interoperate.
It probably helps that so much about DNS is kind of codified into the RFCs.
Yes.
Yeah,
of which there are many.
Yes, I've one of my other hats is security research, and diving into things that have been around for a long time, like DNS, and trying to go to the RFCs. It's like there's about a dozen of them that you have to read through, and you have to figure out, okay, which part of this still applies, which part of this got replaced by some other RFC. It's a lot of fun.
It's a lot, yeah.
You've had your hand in some RFC work throughout the years, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. I've been active in the IETF for quite some time. Part of which just making sure that standards that we think are not good do not get out there. I have authored one RFC all by myself, which is a very boring document, but it seemed important at the time.
What was your RFC about?
It's about the time to live on NSEC and NSEC3 records in DNSSEC. Which is about a very specific case of caching when DNSSEC is in use. And I realized that some of the previous RFCs were in conflict with each other about what to do there. So it's kind of like a document review that then updates a few sentences to make sure things go right.
Yeah, that's the sort of RFC that somebody that doesn't live in that world wouldn't appreciate. But those are important a lot of times. Because without that, you have you have a DNS response that is in a quantum state of both being RFC compliant and not RFC compliant, depending upon which one you look at, and that's sort of a problem. You get bad things from that.
Yeah, something like that. The other one I've been involved in is way cooler. It's called catalog zones, and it's a vendor-independent provisioning mechanism. So what it does is, say you have a primary, you have 100 zones on there, and you want to provision a new secondary from the same or different brand or vendor. You just tell the secondary, my primary is over here, IP 1234. My catalog zone is called catalog.example.com. The secondary transfers that one zone, which is called the catalog. And inside that zone is a list of all the zones you want to host. This allows you to provision and deprovision zones from a primary to secondary without getting on the phone or emailing. Hello, I added the domain. Can you please add it on a secondary as well?
Yeah, nice. It's very useful. What language is PowerDNS written in? Is it old school C still?
No, it was always C++.
Okay.
Which is, slightly less old school than C, but not much, although C++ has been modernized quite well.
Yes.
Over the last few years, we've been adding bits of Rust.
Oh, okay.
I was going to say, I noticed there's some Rust in there from your GitHub repo. So is that something that's going to expand, do you think? Is that...
I think so, yeah. It started with the configuration parser, because we had a hand-rolled one which was just barely adequate. And as the software grows, you want some hierarchy in there. So a coworker said, well, I want to turn this into YAML, which is not my favorite language, but it's also the least bad thing we have for the purpose. And he also wanted to try some Rust, yeah.
I like YAML configs. It's basically my favorite way to do config files. But do continue.
It's the least bad, but
that's fair.
I get it, yeah. So he said, well, I want to redo all this stuff in YAML and also want to try Rust. And parsing YAML with Rust is very easy. So he redid the configuration parser for the recursor in Rust. and that worked out quite well. And then in DNS dist, so need to explain one more thing. The recursor, the authoritative, they speak plain DNS over UDP and TCP. No TLS, no encryption. We handle that the DNS dist as the front-end proxy. So DNS dist has to speak all these protocols, TLS, HTTPS, and QUIC.
Right.
And for QUIC, we use a library called Quiche. Terrible pun. Developed by Cloudflare, I think, in Rust. So that's another bit of Rust that has made its way into our code base. And I think right now Otto is redoing the recursor web server in Rust.
Has that been a pretty good experience using Rust and C++ together in the project?
Yeah. There's some friction because not all data types fit exactly, and if you do reference counting, you need to make sure things go well on both sides. But from what I can tell, because I haven't been involved in that much, it's been going quite well. And the others appear to like Rust, and one day I will also have to learn, which I don't mind.
I'm reminded of the kernel, the Linux kernel, and the hoopla around adding Rust there, and they can't make us learn Rust.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
A bunch of people left over that, didn't they?
A few people have left over that. Yeah, I have opinions on that, but this is probably not the show for that.
No.
Have there been any big CVEs in PowerDNS over the years? Have there been any real bad problems?
If we have a page in the documentation which Dan has been looking at. It's not a big list. Over 25 years, it's not a big list. Most of them have been crashes and not like remote execution. A couple of memory leaks. But I don't think we've had remote execution in quite some time, like maybe 10 years. But
I was going to say on your website there, it does actually say on the front page celebrating 10 years without a severity 1. So
that's a customer support severity 1.
Ah, okay.
It's
Not quite the same, but also worthy of celebration.
yes, exactly. Yeah, that's something marketing wrote up. Although they made me help.
So how do people get involved if they want to hack on this project and they want to get involved? What sort of things? I know you're on GitHub and people can go and clone the code and start working on it. But do you have any advice for people who might want to get involved and think, where do I start with this?
Well, the advice I would always give for anybody wanting to get involved with anything, it really helps if you have something you want. You see a piece of software, you say this is great. However, then you have a problem to solve, and having a direction, I feel makes it a lot easier to figure out how to get there. Then we have a bunch of documentation on how to build, how to develop, how to write safe and readable code. And of course, it's very important. I think that if you want to do that, you join the IRC channel, where we will help you and answer questions and get you on your way to fixing things.
Old school
Excellent.
IRC. That's
Yes.
That's neat
yes.
to see. No Discord, no Matrix, none of that.
No. We have IRC and a mailing list, although that's dying because email.
Yes. I had that conversation just
then we have-
earlier today. Email is terribly broken. Just
Yeah, I heard.
Well, no,
It's terrible because-
another one before that one.
Oh, another. Yeah.
I guess I've had that
No, this
conversation
keeps
twice.
happening.
This makes it 3 times today.
Yeah. No, we basically can't even send email to Microsoft anymore, and Gmail is hit and miss. So we have IRC and the mailing lists, which are trouble, and we use GitHub discussions now, which is okay.
Yeah. They're not terrible. They're not quite as good as full-on issues, but it's not terrible. Now
And I like that they're not intermingled with the issues.
It's true. Yeah, that was a good call that somebody made.
Yeah.
You've got your hands in some other open source stuff, not just PowerDNS. What else do you dabble in?
So for work, I will dabble in some of our dependencies, some of our downstreams like Debian, Ubuntu, Alpine, whatever. I've sent patches to Redis for things we ran into in some of our closed source. So out of our closed source do sometimes come patches for other open source,
Sure.
which is fun. And then outside of work, I don't automate my home that much, but I write a lot of software that allows people to do so. I have a bunch of components in ESP Home. I have a couple of patches in Home Assistant, in the Zigbee quirks, where the default stack doesn't handle a device well. You can write a quirk that tells it, well, this device has these endpoints that you need to use this way. I've built a bunch of those. And also I work on an actual Home Assistant front end for low power devices.
Interesting.
Excellent. So how did you come to get involved in open source software, Peter? Was there a moment where you were introduced to it, or you had an epiphany and you just decided it was something that you were interested in?
Yes, I remember it vividly. It's like 30 years ago. I was a nerd with a PC with DOS and Windows, and I got some shareware CD, which had a big list of software on it. And I found on this CD another directory, which was not listed on the wrapper or label or whatever. And it said Slackware. So somebody found some free space on the shareware CD they were selling and decided, let's give the people some Linux. So I installed that, and it was magic. It was like I was already familiar with the command line. I had the DOS command line. I had 4 DOS on that, the command.com replacement, if you recall. It's been quite a while ago. But then there was this Linux with this bash shell, which was a lot more powerful. Then I found Perl, which ruined me forever. I don't do a lot of Perl anymore. And then I realized I could just edit things and fix things. So this was 1997, 98. We just got ISDN at home, if you remember. And I tried to call into an ISP with it, and the PPP daemon would crash because it was written by a German. And German ISDN in some specific bits was different from Dutch ISDN. But I had the sources, so I could just find out what went wrong and fix that. And I think that's when I caught the open source bug. And it obviously has not gone away.
That's great. I read a little note here that you have apparently deployed ESP Home somewhere rather weird.
Yeah, I have one. Well, I had one in a car. My wife had a Alta 2005 Toyota with a terrible radio, which in theory had navigation. We never figured out how to work it, and it had like this 2-line LCD thing anyway. So she always had her phone running Android and Waze mounted to the dash. But she learned about Android Auto, and she said, well, can't I have Android Auto? So we looked at it. We bought an Android Auto radio with a nice touchscreen and all. But then her steering wheel controls, she has like these buttons, volume up, volume down, next track. Those didn't work anymore. So I bought a conversion kit for that, which people sell for $70-$80. They all contain the exact same little blue box and 2 cables, one that fits your car, one that fits your radio, except it did not fit. So I had to go look around what went wrong. It turned out Toyota changed these connectors a couple of times over the years. So I sent the seller of that conversion kit an email, and he said, well, I cannot sell you that cable. So I decided, well, I have a multimeter. I'm sure I can find out. And that's when I learned that the steering wheel controls, they all sit together on one electrical circuit and just have different resistances running over them.
Oof, fun.
So if you just have a multimeter and apply some voltage, or, well, the multimeter does that, and you push the buttons, you see the different resistances. And then the radio on the other end had the exact same interface, but with different values. And so I looked online. People had been doing this with Arduinos. One person designed a whole circuit without a microcontroller to do this conversion. That all seemed hard. And I was like, if you can do it with an Arduino with code, you can also do it with ESP Home without code. So ESP Home has an ADC component, which allows you to read voltages which would depend on those resistances. So a couple days later, I was able to receive the steering wheel buttons. And then I used a bunch of resistors that I switched separately to send these different resistances to the radio. And it's quite over-engineered, but it works.
Oh, that's hilarious. No, I like that. I like that a lot.
I suspect it still might be in that car because we sold it some time ago.
Wow.
I pity the poor tech that opens it up for the first time and tries to figure out what exactly you did.
Yes. Yeah, no doubt.
I've not done that to my vehicles, but I've done similar things to my house, and I have thought multiple times, like, the next person that moves in here, it's going to be, if I ever sell it, it's going to be quite the archaeological dig to figure out what's going on with all of this cabling and Raspberry Pis everywhere. What's going on here?
Yeah, you should leave a manual when you sell it.
Yeah, I suppose I could. So I was also told that apparently your shirt has a special message for us.
Oh, yeah. My shirt says, I hacked the Dutch government, and all I got was this lousy T-shirt.
There must be a story there.
Yes, the Dutch government sent me this T-shirt.
Wow.
I was... so they're quite coveted. No, I was helping a friend with a PowerDNS problem, and he said, I cannot get to this government website. So we looked at it, and his resolver, his recursor, had gotten into a state where indeed he could not resolve the name of this website. And I looked at it some more, and I recognized a problem that's actually widely documented with one brand of load balancers. But then I realized that this state that his resolver had gotten into, I could cause at will in other people's resolvers, which means I could decide, or some attacker could decide, you, that resolver over there, for the next hour is not going to be able to visit this government website. So I spoke to a couple of people, some of them with connections to the right part of government, and they said, well, we've been trying to get this fixed for quite some time, but the pressure is not coming from the right place. So I reported it not to this department, but to the Dutch Cybersecurity Center, the NCSC, and they emailed back within 10 minutes going, we see what you got, we replicated the finding, we're going to get it fixed. And then they did. So that's a good trick in general. If you want something fixed and you cannot get people to do it, you need to find out who is suffering from this problem or who will feel the pain or the responsibility for this and maybe go there. So then they fixed it and they sent me this T-shirt.
That's
which
very
I
cool.
don't wear out in public because I don't like questions, but I figured it would be fun for today.
You don't like questions from random people. I get that.
Yeah.
Yep.
That reminds me of something fun. I bought an OpenBSD T-shirt once, with some artwork, and it said OpenBSD. And I also bought a kids version for one of the kids, and that one did not say OpenBSD. It was just a cute shirt. And I don't know if they did that on purpose, but I can imagine a designer going, the kid doesn't even know what OpenBSD is. It does not want these questions.
Indeed. I see in your bio that you've done some work with OpenWRT. Is that correct? Yes. So a couple of years ago, there was actually a customer project for PowerDNS. Somebody said, this load balancer you have, can you run it on OpenWRT? We were like, that's a good question, because most people who deploy it have 1 million gigabytes of RAM and not 1 million bytes of RAM. So we spent quite some time shrinking the software, fixing defaults, allowing you to strip out components you don't need. And in that process, I've gotten quite used to OpenWRT. So then I also started doing hobby things with OpenWRT. I have half ported it to a couple of devices that did not support it before. I've worked on the package manager a bit. I often easily let myself get distracted by things I think can be better, and then I go fix them, or maybe half fix them. As I love to say, we are capable of a nearly infinite amount of work, so long as it is not the work we are supposed to be doing at a given time.
Yes, yes, exactly.
How slim did you get the that load balancer for OpenWRT?
I think we got it down to 5 or 6 megabytes of disk and 7 or 8 megabytes of memory usage.
Yeah.
Which is quite a bit more than the DNS stack called DNS Mask that is shipped normally. But then this is with DNS over TLS and HTTPS and a bunch of other stuff and a whole scripting engine.
Yes, yeah. I remember using OpenWRT back when it fully supported 4 meg disks. And back at that time, it was sort of rumored that you could leave out all of the web interface stuff and actually fit it into a router that just had 2 megs worth of disk space. So, a single package of 7 or 8 megs is huge in comparison to that. But I think the OpenWRT guys have since then said that's not a good idea to run on something that small. We recommend like 8 or 16 megs of disk space at the minimum now.
No, they're way past that. There's like a 432 warning on the website for 4 RAM, 32 flash, and an 864 warning on the website for 8 megs of RAM and 64 megabytes of flash. So I believe they recommend 16 RAM and 128 flash now, or something along those lines.
Isn't that swapped? Isn't it the other way around? Like 8 megs of flash and 32 megs of RAM? I think.
Yes. That makes more sense. But anyway, they've grown quite a bit since the 4 or 2 megabyte days.
Yes. Is PowerDNS itself on OpenWRT?
We're in the packages tree. You can just tell OPKG or the new one they use APK to download the software or have it included when you rebuild an image. Mm-hmm. And all the work we did to slim down DNS dist is currently an open PR for that packages tree, because it's quite a big PR.
Understood.
And they are clearly understaffed in that area.
Yeah. The nice thing about running stuff on OpenWRT is you can do it on like a virtual machine. So I've got a x64 VM of OpenWRT, and that's got all the space that you want. So I could totally put PowerDNS on that. I don't think I need to. I'm not sure why I would, other than because I can. Although maybe that's a reason in and of itself.
Yeah, well, if it saves you another VM, maybe.
That's fair. Dan, did you have any questions that you want to get in before we wrap?
That is a good question. So I'm just trying to think of something now. So a lot of you talked about some of the smallest distribution, like putting it in OpenWRT, running it with stuff like that. Is some of the kind of edge IoT stuff, does that present extra challenges when it comes to things like DNS and security? Because I know a lot of people have problems with IoT devices that are unsecure because they haven't been set up properly or whatever reason. But I noticed that with PowerDNS, you can kind of mitigate a lot of problems. Could you speak to anything to do with that?
In IoT, the S stands for security.
Yes, exactly. I don't know much, but I know a little. Have you heard of Dane? DENE?
Not sure.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so we have the whole TLS ecosystem with the X509 certificates and the CAB run by the browsers, where Mozilla and Google decide who gets to be a certificate authority. Mm-hmm. Then on the other hand, we have DNSSEC, which de facto has one certificate authority, which is ICANN. But in DNSSEC, you can form a chain of trust from the root to com to example.com or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then some people went, what if we then tie our web or whatever certificates into that DNSSEC chain? The browser vendors decided we don't want that. Mail operators do use this. And then recently in the ITF, there's a new working group called DANCE, which is like Dane plus the C for client. Mm-hmm. And I wish I could tell you what DANE stands for, but I forgot right now. So they're doing things with client certificates in DNS. So some people envision that if you have DNSSEC, you can build a whole structure around your infrastructure and the edge and tie all those things together. But it's not really my area.
DNS-based authentication of named entities is DANE.
Of course, yeah.
How could you forget that?
Then,
it rolls right off the tongue.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, that's actually really interesting. That's fun.
So what's the... is there anything coming up on the roadmap or anything exciting that you want to tell us about that you're working towards or you've got on the horizon?
Yeah, that's a good question.
For PowerDNS?
Yeah. So the thing I've been working on recently, or actually been trying to work on for the last 2 years, but recently finally gotten to, in Bind, the original name server basically, you have a concept called views, where you go, these people on this network, they see this version of a zone, the people on the internet see this other version of a zone, and it's basically like running multiple Bind instances in one process.
Yeah.
And as I understand it, Bind has always been designed for that feature. PowerDNS has not. We have geo things you can do per record or whatever, but there's always been a demand from people to say, who said, I want one PowerDNS to pretend to be 100 PowerDNSs, but I don't want to run 100 PowerDNSs. And our founder, Bert, he always said, we're not doing that because adding that now will be a trail of destruction through the code base. So for the last 3 months, me and a coworker have been utterly destroying our code base to get that feature in. And with enough time and effort, we've been able to split this out in a bunch of patches, the first 5 of which did nothing except restructure. And now we're getting to a point that the actual adding of the feature is not that destructive. But he was not wrong. It is quite the exercise.
Oh, I'm sure.
So anyway, that's coming up for the authoritative. And for the others, I don't know if I have any major highlights.
Does the project, the PowerDNS, the rest of the projects, do they have like a continuous integration set up and a test suite? So when you go and blaze a trail of destruction through your code base, you kind of have some tools to make sure you didn't actually break things?
I don't know if you can see my whiteboard. There's a matrix there with 3 zeros and a 3.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
That 3 has been counting down failing tests all week in one combination of settings. So yes.
That's good. That's one of the things that actually started to bother me about the Linux kernel itself, is that they don't have any of that set up, and I don't know. That's actually a little concerning. So I'm glad to hear that at least one of those basic building blocks of the internet, PowerDNS, which we all use whether we know it or not, has some things going for it.
Yes.
All right. So Dan kind of asked you this question. I'll ask it in a slightly different way. Is there anything that we didn't ask you about that you wanted to cover that that we can touch on real quick?
No, I wouldn't know something immediately. I mean, you have the list I sent you before. But,
yes, our panic questions for when we can't think of anything at that particular moment.
yeah.
I think we actually covered those fairly well.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, and again, I know the answer to at least one of these. What is your favorite text editor and scripting language?
Oh, you don't know the answer to the first one. You think you do.
I think I do.
No, I use VI for administration, but I use Sublime Text for development.
Aha.
It's just Sublime is not great with doing things remotely.
Sure.
And when you're in a shell fixing things, it's easier to just pop out VI.
Yeah, makes sense.
But otherwise, use Sublime Text with the language server integration, so it talks to the C compiler for completion and information and introspection, etc. The other one's a scripting language. I'm quite fond of Lua, which is great to embed in other software. It's in all the PowerDNS software too. The DNS disk configuration is Lua. If you want to do anything fancy in the recursor, it's Lua.
That works out well.
Works
out well for working with OpenWRT stuff as well, because so much of that is based on Lua.
They're getting rid of that.
Are they really?
Yes.
Oh my goodness! I won't even recognize the project anymore. I'd be lost.
So they're replacing it with Ucode, which at least spiritually is quite Lua-like. But I guess it integrates better with what they have. They're building it themselves.
Very cool.
Besides that, I grab Python a lot because it's just so powerful in so little code.
Yeah.
But there's always a risk of that code then going to production, and it's so slow.
Yeah.
It's wasteful. But for anything quick that I want to do for myself, I really like Python.
Yeah. It's ubiquitous at this point.
Yes.
All right. Well, hey, we appreciate you being here, talking all about PowerDNS and some of the other projects you've have going on. It's been a lot of fun, and I don't know, maybe in a few months we'll have to have you back and talk about what's changed and what's new. I think that'd be great.
Why not? Thank you for having me.
Yep. Thank you so much. Dan, what do you think?
I thought it was really interesting, really great to talk to Peter about so many different things. And I always like to know, I know I always ask that question, but I always like to know what got people into open source. And he had another great little story there about that, which I think is very interesting to hear. But I'm not convinced yet whether I'm going to be hosting my own DNS next time we speak. I'm on the fence a little bit, not because of anything to do with PowerDNS. PowerDNS seems great. I'm not sure I trust myself as much as I need to for that.
I mean, you could set up a PowerDNS just resolver on your own network.
True. Yeah, that's true. Maybe that's something I should do.
You're already hosting that, right? You just unless you've set all of your computers just to look over at Google DNS, which
no
is a temptation. It's very easy to do because it does just work, but there is definitely something to be said for hosting your own DNS and not just giving all of that information away to Google.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an amazing project as well, PowerDNS. It is literally, as you already said, even though before today, before I started really looking into it, I couldn't say I knew much about it. I've probably interacted with it millions of times without even knowing.
Yeah, it sounds like it runs some large-ish percentage of the internet. So yeah, definitely, it's definitely one of those projects that is sort of foundational as a building block in the internet. And I'm really glad to hear that they've got their funding model sorted and they could actually pay some people to work on it full time. That's really encouraging to hear. I like those stories. Yeah. All right. Is there anything that you wanted to plug before we let folks go?
Same as last time. Even though I haven't been on here for a long time, I haven't got any new plugs. So it's back to the traditional ones. So yeah, I mentioned Liverpool Make Fest, which is an event that I helped to run. It's a one-day maker festival where we have all kinds of stuff from. I mean, we do have all the high-tech stuff there. We got drones, we got robots, and all kinds of other stuff. But everything right down to like crafting stuff people make out of wood or other things. There's any kind of making is good with us. If you go to liverpoolmakefest.org, you can find all the information about that. But it's coming up on July 5th, so it's getting closer. Yeah, and it's a one-day event. So if anybody is near to Liverpool and you want to come, it's completely free as in beer and free as in freedom. So you can come along and come to the library and discover 4 whole floors of maker stuff. So cool. Yeah, go and check that out. That's my plug for this week.
And if somebody wants to follow you, is there a good place to do it?
Yeah, danlynch.org is the place to go, where you can find all my social media stuff, which tends to mostly be Mastodon these days, but I still have a Twitter account and I occasionally post to it as well. Sorry, X, as we're supposed to call it. Yeah, I still have a few things on there and Instagram and other stuff. But yeah, danlynch.org is the best place to find anything about me.
Very good. All right, appreciate you being here, man.
Thank you.
All right. If you want to find more of me, there is, of course, Hackaday. We appreciate Hackaday being the home of Floss Weekly these days. I have the security column goes there every Friday morning. We have a lot of fun with that. And the occasional byline article that'll go live from me, but it's mostly Floss Weekly and This Week in Security these days. And then there's also the Untitled Linux show over at twit.tv. We just had our 200th episode. And Leo actually jumped in for a few minutes in the middle of it to help us celebrate. We told him when we get to episode 255, which will be a more mathematically significant number, at least for us programmers, that we're going to bring him in and make him do the whole show with us. And he said that sounded good. So look forward to that too. But you can check out ULS for Linux news and some how-tos, some tips, all kinds of fun stuff there. We appreciate everybody that watches and listens to Floss Weekly. Those will get us live and on the download. And we will see you next week. Bye.